I don't remember who introduced the last episode, so
I
fuck
did.
it.
Remember, I had an epic fucking. I said Bankai.
Yeah, that's right. I remember now. Yeah, I edited it too, but it was Anyway, I had a much more non-introduction this time. So anyway, hello everybody. We're doing more of this funny Bleach novel, Can't Figure Out World. It's me, Craftsdorf, here with HotBoySpicy. How are you doing? It's a
comedy first and foremost, guys. Let me know.
Yes, exactly. What's up? I don't know. I forget what we're
doing. What's up is actually, that's relevant to one of the only notes I took, believe it or not. The direction up specifically will be up in the coming dialogue. So guys, stay tuned for that.
All right, that's good to know. Before we get into novel comments, that said, none of the comments I want to respond to are actually relevant to Can't Figure Out World. Actually, now I look at them. So one of them actually on the Can't Figure Out World episode, Dai God asking me about the Nen show. Basically, we're changing the structure of the Nen show because Mathwas just isn't a place to do it bi-weekly anymore. And frankly, I don't mind that much because I now have this other podcast I edit, and I got other stuff going on. So it's and then so we're going to continue with Magi. We're going to do more series that we just feel like doing instead of just like having our whole convoluted system and whatever. But yeah, there will be more eventually, hopefully, I think, probably. So on the last Bleach discussion, episode 9, there was KXNCV made a nice write-up about the sort of parent-child dynamics through Kurosuchi and Kenpachi, sort of observing Kenpachi being the child and Mayuri being the parent in their respective dynamics. A good write-up. I appreciated it. And then back on episode 6, I got a comment from Petty who was talking about who basically positing the idea for of Ichigo, because I was talking about and I'm working on the video of Aizen conquering all of his fears, but he was basically reading into Ichigo how Ichigo relates to those fears and stuff. But right there, wait, hold on, actually. Ichigo reflecting the aspects of death he conquered. Him conquering Aizen fears, I guess, which is an interesting idea. But I hadn't thought about it like that. But maybe I don't know if it'll work into the video. But yeah, just another neat perspective to consider. So.
Cool.
Anyway, I don't think I'm gonna have that much to say about this novel, even though it's so long.
That was gonna be my next phrase, actually. I literally, as soon as I finished it this morning, and here's what I typed to Radman. I told him, pretty funny that the end of Volume 2 is basically just a big fuck you. Buy Volume 3 to get literally everything you've wanted to know since Volume 1. And then I said, I now understand what you mean by it being crazy, because it's just a huge blue ball. I feel basically for the people that were reading this and it had just come out and they binged the shit out of it, and then they had to wait for God knows how long unless they all came out simultaneously. I don't know. I don't actually know.
I bought them relatively close to each other and then have proceeded to not read them. I've literally had them on my shelf for years. So I'm finally getting around to reading. I have physical volumes. Finally getting around to reading it. But yeah, I guess it's because I even think I remember Radman mentioning how it's oh man, Can't Figure Out World Volume 3 is crazy. And in my head, part of me was what about the rest of it? And now it's now having read volumes 1 and 2, it's I get it, because it's literally 800 pages of setup for what better fucking be a banger novel, right?
And I expect it to 100% be.
Yeah. And especially, I think it's understandable just because even though they're released in 3 different volumes, this one doesn't even have an ending. Volume 1, I feel at least the way it ends with here's all these threads that are happening and shit's gonna happen. And sure, shit definitely happened in this novel, but it literally ends partway through just structurally it just doesn't make sense as an endpoint. It's just they're already all at the place invading Tokionada's residence in the extra space that I'm forgetting all the names and shit. And then Shinji is about to use his Bankai, and that's where the novel ends. It just it's neat. It's cool. It's also it feels you mentioned Blue Ball. It's We haven't
so
seen
funny,
Shinji's
for you.
Bankai.
Yeah,
This
especially for you,
motherfucker.
I've seen the Bankai via core 2 of the anime, so like I already know what's coming. It's just so funny for you because I literally the first thought I had was like, oh crafts, he finally gets the fucking note. Nope, you get blue ball. Sorry, you don't even get that. You don't even get that in this fucking volume. No, but that's not to discount the amazing setup we've got. Because I will say, while we're kind of, I even ragged on it around. It was literally the first thing I did. But genuinely, I was engaged for all of this volume. I was not disengaged at all. I enjoyed all the new characters. Aura is a great addition to the cast. Well, all the additions have been great. Hikone, Tokinata especially, of course. Right?
Yeah.
Shinosuke, is that his name? What's his fucking name again? Seinosuke. Is it Seinosuke?
Oh yeah, or you're Yamada's brother, right?
Yeah.
Seinosuke is
Seinosuke.
Yes.
Seinosuke is a really cool character. I hope we get to see. We didn't get to see as much of him.
He was. I don't think he was here at all. I don't think he was even in this. He was maybe mentioned
once
or twice.
He was in the flashback. He was in the flashback.
Oh god, that was it. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Oh no, and no. Because he was talking to Kyoraku. No, that wasn't a flashback. He was talking to Kyoraku in real time, talking about his involvement with Hikone's creation. Yeah.
That's right. You're right. He did.
Yeah.
Because that's it. Well, because I was even just thinking about how it's like, you've seen the Bankai through the Thousand Year Blood War anime adaptation, but at the same time, that like these novels came out first. So I was just thinking about like for me, it's kind of a blue ball, not only because I haven't seen the Thousand Year Blood War, but because like I read Bleach back in like 2018, 2019 on the Nen show. And like imagine the people who, like have had to wait until Camp Hero World Volume 3 to see it. Having read Bleach like weekly through like the Arankar stuff and being like, oh man, I hope Shinji uses bot. Okay. Oh, cool. Thousand Year Blood War Shinji's there. I hope he gets to use his bot. Oh, okay. And just like that forever until literally like a fucking the third volume. Like oh my god, like having that, like you be like, oh cool, I get to see Shinji's Bankai in the novel, and then that doesn't happen. Like just oh my god, yeah, just it never ends. It never ends. So it will end. Literally next volume. It's already over.
Yeah.
Where do we start with this one?
Okay, there's another thing about the novel. Most of this novel is just a battle royale, taking place in the Rukongai. That is like a large chunk of this novel.
Yes,
is the clusterfuck of factions coming together and just kind of squaring off.
No, it's literally Soul Reapers, Arankars, Quincy's, and Fullbringer Battle Royale. It's like, so you got all the different like types of power sets you can have just all in one big rumble, and then it just ends where it's like the other
kind of not as sizable chunk, but a pretty sizable chunk is at Urahara Shoten with Aura.
Yes, so it's basically this novel is just two massive fights happening for 500 pages practically, and there's obviously other stuff going around or other stuff happening. Like even aside from the big stuff, there's like little moments that are neat, like Dordoni hearing that Ichigo killed Ginjo and like him responding to that, given like his lesson to Ichigo. And about like he just had it was just a small little
finally abandoned his chocolate sweetness. Let's fucking
moment of recognition, but it's still just like
but it's cool though. No wait, I'm glad you brought that up because I should have taken a note on that. I didn't. I thought at the time, because when he said you finally abandoned that, I was like, well, actually, in context, it was Ichigo adhering to that, if anything. In actuality, because I go into that in that Fullbring episode, but I don't want to repeat the same thing.
No, and I related that to like the growing up angle that Fullbring kind of discusses. So yes, we talked about it.
Yeah, true. There's that as well. Yeah.
Because I was gonna say something. I forgot what it was. Unfortunate.
That is unfortunate.
Oh no! It's like one of the appeals to this, I think, and it happens to a degree in the Thousand Year Blood War, but really like it's all the I don't think the Fullbringers have an interaction that isn't with like Ichigo in group, which is mostly characters they've already interacted with, right? So it doesn't where I feel like because one of the things about like these long form stories is that you do have all these like, and especially arc based ones, is you have all these like cast members who kind of don't interact with each other. So like the Fullbringers were kind of like separate from all the other, a lot of the Arrancars didn't interact with many of the Quincy's, or if any, so basically it's kind of like an example, equivalent example I can think of is like the Reverie in One Piece, where you have like all these characters from all these different arcs interacting with each other, right? Like Dalton and Vivi and Rebecca and Shirahoshi, so it's like these characters never, like, because the world of One Piece is so big, these characters never would have had the chance to interact with each other through the normal course of the story. But in this arc, you get them all together, and it's really fun, and you have a bunch of fun interactions resulting from that. So this is kind of like that, where he's just throwing in these characters who didn't have the chance to interact with each other before, and now can, basically.
Yeah, it's so fun too, because as soon as I saw the setup scene where it was Kimpachi was walking into Kukaku's place, the Shiba residence.
Yes.
I immediately thought he and Grimjow are gonna have a fucking saucy interaction. I already fucking, and it did happen. I was like, yep, I fucking knew it. Of course, these guys would be like zeroing in on each other. Of fucking course.
Right?
So,
they're just like
cool.
the game recognizes game, right? Like they smell the blood on the other, and they're like, "You're just like me, for real, for real. Let's kill the fuck out of each other. It'll be based."
Unfortunately, but
no. Well, because like that's the the ultimate, like, because like they're all on the same side, right? Because they they have a mutual interest, and Kyoraku is good this volume. Like earlier on, there was a I like when he's thinking about Yamamoto, and he's just like, even though he's recognizes a lot of flaws with what Yamamoto was doing and stuff, he's realizing that he's coming to respect him more and more each day for being able to take on that burden and make those hard choices. Now that Kyoraku's in that same position, just that was a good moment.
Yeah. I will say, speaking of the absolute blue ball nature of this volume, at the very end, we don't even get to know what Tosin he was gonna say, because I thought he was just gonna say, oh, like eyesight, but then I immediately paused and was like, no, it's got to be more than that. Like this scene has been building up to something bigger than that, but we don't. And I thought it was gonna end on a bang, on like Tosin revealing what he wanted out of Aizen, if anything. But we don't even get that. I was like, bruh, ain't no way. Forgot to mention that. Because that was like the last blue ball.
Yeah, no, well, because like, and even that scene was also hinting, like, because, well, so for starters, the novel open. You were speculating last time. I think you had the idea that maybe Tokunada already knows some shit, and then what is the first the volume open with, and like literally the first interlude is like, he knows some shit, and like a big motivator for his actions is. Like he did hint that he picked up on the hint of like, Soul Society's entirely falsehoods or something. I forget the exact line, but
yeah. It's him and Aizen seem to have a similar disdain to it, because Aizen even says in this last scene is like,
that's what I was.
Soul
Yes, that's what I was
built
getting
atop
at.
sin,
Yes.
right?
Because that's what I'm especially interested in, because like, I mean, already for one of my Bleach videos, I there's a character that I'm have my attention on, but like, it's fucking Aizen. He's the GOAT. Like, I'm curious as to like how, because I mean, I feel like I already have most of it just based on like the spoiler I heard years ago for Camp for Your Own World, and how that relates to Aizen's lines at the very end about this sort of original sin of Soul Society, right? Where he's basically, his idea is to wash away the sin by killing, taking the place of the Reo and overthrowing Soul Society, so that like, it's what does he say? He uses the term prisoner of sacrifice, or I use that term, but I forget exactly how he worded it. But because ultimately, like, he even distinguishes, like, the Soul Reapers are flawed, and he has major problems with them, but he still prefers that the world they created with these clear boundaries between life and death versus what the Quincy's have, which is like very clear from how he acted in Thousand Year Blood War.
Yeah.
But and I was gonna mention earlier, I forgot, but basically, like, I guess one of the reasons where it's like, they're one really big novel that happens to be divided in 3 parts is just the way the chapters are ordered, where it's like, we read chapter, aside from the interludes, we read chapters 6 through 18, right? So it's like, the numbers just keep counting up, basically. So but anyway, you mentioned Aura earlier. Did you have any specific thoughts on her?
On who? Sorry.
Aura Michibane.
Oh, Aura.
The Fullbringer.
Yeah, not really. Not mean, her story. I honestly should have thought more about it while I was reading it. Although in this last 2 days, I've been kind of speedrunning it. Not gonna lie, shit's been going on with me, so I had to catch up on some reading, but I did it. I think her story is really interesting. Just surface level, I think it's really interesting.
Okay.
I think it's really cool that, I mean, with her power too, how her backstory relates to her power, her relationship with her father, how her manipulation of things makes her seemingly like the ultimate Fullbringer. Yet she doesn't have any.
Yes.
She doesn't have any personal ability to be heightened. I think
that's
really
what I thought was interesting about her. Less like story wise and more just like setting wise of just like, you know, the Fullbringers introduced this idea of these characters in the world, and Ara is meant to like push that idea to its limits in a really neat way, because it's like, oh, the Fullbringers all have this attachment and that's how they get their unique powers. So what if you have a Fullbringer who has no attachment, right? And then there's even, they added on where it's like she's a second generation, where she's the result of a Fullbringer parent and her mom was attacked by a Hollow, which is what creates Fullbringers. And the fucking mention that apparently the Fullbringers are connected to the pieces, like the nail of the Soul King or something, like nails, because he would so like
that's why they're attracted to the Hollows. Mm-hmm. The Hollows are
right, because they're natural enemy, the Quincy's, and it's like, what are you cooking? What are you cooking? Then they also specifically mentioned that Ara is she has the Saketsu of the Soul King, which is it's the organ that creats Reishi, that it's where Byakuya stabbed Ichigo at the end of the Substitute Soul Reaper arc. Yes, yeah. So the Reio's that basically is. I did have to look that up because I was like, I don't remember a lot of these terms. Just for some of them, I do, like Zanpakuto, obviously, like the ones that you used a lot, but some of them more like I think they were mentioning with the what was it? The way that the Ara's group was sort of like she had all those minions with how had the miniaturized devices and stuff. I forget what they were called, but like it's basically the same material that was those pillars that were used in the fake Karakura Town stuff to to basically transport the Karakura Town and the fake Karakura Town, and doing that on a different scale. And so it's terms like that I had to like look up to see like what the fuck are you talking about, because it's just the Japanese word that I haven't internalized yet. So stuff like that, but that's I understand, especially since like it is what it is. And they do often explain what they are, I'd say. Not always, but they if not immediately, then shortly after they bring it up. So, yeah.
Yeah, and, fuck, what was I going to say? Aura is, I am interested in where the dynamic between Tokinata is going to lead, because right now, it's less so she has an attachment to Tokinata, and more so she's curious as to why he's doing what he's doing and where it's going to lead. Almost childlike in a sense, like she has a wonder for Tokinata that's a little bit innocent in a sense.
Right.
I mean, even her creation of Hikone, which I guess the big revelation here is that she was basically the person that cooked Hikone up mostly.
It was like
the brain.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the brain, and then of course Seinosuke also.
Seinosuke making it actual.
Yes, like
functional.
It was. Yeah. Yes. Right. Anyway, go ahead.
It's very interesting. Like this goes along with the novel. Everything I'm curious about, I know is going to be answered in Volume 3. Mm-hmm. And I don't really have any particular predictions. I'd imagine Aura is going to survive this, and then she's going to have some. I would imagine there's going to be something that, at least if not an attachment by the end of Volume 3, she's going to have something that might lead to an attachment that might interest her in a more emotional way, rather than I guess, just purely inquisitive way, if that makes sense.
Right. Well, just thinking about how she relates to certain ideas is because, like, she kind of ended up going along with Tokinata, and I think I forget if it's the way they framed it or if this is the way I'm thinking of it, where it's just like she's just kind of gone along with the flow of her life, pretty much. Like she hasn't, if she's trapped within, she's not trapped within cogs of fate as much as she's riding them. Right, she's not. Yeah. She doesn't care to fight them or go in a direction of her own. And she's also, she's someone without a heart. Right, she doesn't really have a bond or attachment with anyone. So, that's why she's just sort of going along with whatever makes sense at the time, right?
Yeah, I love the description too about even when it comes to her starvation after her father died, how she says, in recollection, I can imagine me growing an attachment for food, had the food not been rancid that first touched my my tongue when I was starving. And I thought that was a really interesting detail. Just stuff like that in novelization is easier to do in general, but. Oh fuck! I was gonna say something actually important for my last note on Aura. By note I mean mental note. That's why I'm forgetting it. Well, I'll hopefully remember it, but.
But anyway. Yeah, it's like the way you were talking about with her maybe finding an because like if she herself is a sort of like pushing the idea of the Fullbringer to a certain limit and exploring that, then the next logical step would be to push her to her limit. Like what happens if this person who has developed all this power and hasn't gotten attachment, like what happens when she does find an attachment? What happens when she, who's been riding the cogs of fate, maybe finds a reason to push against that, right? Or something like that.
Okay, that's what I was going to say. I think a part of it too is because she has an attachment to her dad and she sees her dad with such tender care, because fundamentally he did care about her and she saw that in him. The reason why she rides the cogs of fate rather than feeling trapped is because when she was in that place, as long as her dad was there and he loved her, she didn't feel trapped in that place. She's essentially extended the cage. She's still confined herself, but she's just sort of opened up this. She's just put wheels around the cage, if that makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. She doesn't because she doesn't view it as a problem. If she viewed it as a problem, she would have already broken out probably by now. But the fact that she doesn't view that as a problem, and that's just her life. I'm wondering what is going to show her that there's something different and better for her, and that the way she's been living is wrong. I would hope that's where we're going with it. Unless there's more, I feel like there could always be a more interesting,
I feel like it's that's the positive direction of her, or there it goes the more tragic route, and that she just doesn't do anything, and because I don't think that's maybe the best way to live your life. There's comfort in that, but also when you're letting yourself be pulled around by forces you don't control, especially when that force is Toki fucking Nada, who's like, yes, I have good intentions and all of my followers will be perfectly fine, that's just the kind of, there's no fucking way, right? He's the shadiest motherfucker to cast shade on anything, so it's maybe you're not, maybe this isn't the cogs you want to ride on.
That's all I had to say on Aura, though.
Let's see.
I don't have anything. The issue is I don't have anything uber interesting to say about the battle royale and the Rukongai.
No, because that's kind of what I walked away. Because let's see, we got I was for other reasons I was looking at the Wikipedia page for the Espada, and it was for all the former Espada, it said they've had this number, but we don't know what their aspect of death was. But from how I read what they really mean, being related to heights and spheres, it's they're the same. So, and I feel like this novel particularly confirms it with Lupi, because for some reason the Wikipedia had Lupi as we don't know what Lupi, his aspect of death was, and it's Luffy's literally defined by destruction. Chapter 11 makes that very clear, as my notes say, and that Luffy was number 6, like Grimjo. Who's number 6? Who's destruction? So it's I don't know. Just be reacting to the Wikipedia more so than the novel, but because we just get little things with Giriko. I think the butler guy, we get more of his powers and what he can do is kind of neat, because I feel like the only thing we saw of his powers was him getting strong and then getting cut up by Kenpachi, but he does a couple more things with his time ability, like the way he
tells no lies. Yes.
The way he I don't know, I thought it was because he has Tsukishima use his power, and then he takes the time, because they both have time related powers, so it's there's a neat synergy there, and it's that's pretty cool. And
speaking of Tsukishima and his ability, that there's a raw ass scene near the end where he's looking at Mayuri, and then he's nah, Ginjo, I'm not even gonna bother. This person's only been in existence for maybe a few minutes.
Dude, what a sneaky bitch, dude.
And then Mayuri automatically is oh, that's interesting. So just holding the bookmark and homing in on someone, you can tell exactly how much of their passers. That okay, I'm gonna keep that in mind.
Dude.
It's like, damn, this is a cool ass exchange.
Kurasuchi's so fucking fun. I love him so. Early in the novel, he's like, yeah, I made my own surveillance system because fuck the aristocracy. They're bitches, and I want because they're like taking over his shit, and he's like, no, I'm just gonna make my own better surveillance system for myself. Fuck you. And then like later, I love the interaction where he's Kiraku's giving him shit, I think, and he's like, you think you have authority over me? And Kiraku's like, how do you think I don't have authority over you? Like, he's such a piece of shit. It's literally Captain General, and it's like, what are you talking about?
Kiraku really just, he gave him the bruh after he's like, bro, come on now, man.
And also they mentioned how it's just an interesting thought that if Kiraku were to die, Byakuya would probably be the next Captain General. And I'm just like sat there like, that's an interesting mental image.
Oh, that's a crazy revelation to just drop. Even though it's not really like because we don't know for sure, right?
Yeah, well, because like who else would it be, right? Like I feel like he's the most reliable. He's nobility, so he's got that going for him. He's really strong still, so I just feel like, but he's just young. That's really what gets it for me, because Kiraku is obviously older than basically all of the other captains at this point.
It should be Shinji because he has leadership experience as the leader of the Wizards. So actually, my vote for Shinji.
That'd be. I was just trying to run through, and it's like I can understand why Byakuya would be the next pick, even though it's such a weird mental image because I don't know why. It's just like even like about with Kiraku being Captain General, but I just had never considered like, well, if he does die, then who's next, right? So
Also, we've been talking about this scene for a while, so I should also mention another example of a description of Kiraku's spiritual pressure, and it's another sick ass description.
Yes,
it was like a knife at the bottom of cold water or some shit like that. I was like, damn, Kiraku, this is so cold. It's cold. It's literally cold. It is literally cold. That's what a spiritual pressure feels like. But it's cool stuff. Just a lot of raw moments.
Let's see some other. So Hisagi, the supposed main character. I thought he was, but he doesn't feel like a main character. To be honest.
Near the end, where the speech and shit, that was cool.
I did. I really liked the dialogue about because the way they talked about how Ichigo has so much strength, but when he falls to fear, it's like devastating. Right, because he takes so much burden on himself that when he gets crushed under that burden, it's really rough. So the way Hisagi's strength is because he continually walks with fear, he's more stable, right? He doesn't have those major low points. Like, this is his low point, honestly. Like, oops, I watched Urahara get his shit kicked in by a fucking crazy-ass Fullbringer in this fucking insane dragon fight over Karakura Town. Like, what?
That's one of my few notes is actually about that technique, believe it or not.
Okay. But, and then just so the way they have that pickup moment for Hisagi where it's like, that's your strength. You can be strong for others when they're at your lowest because you'll never hit that kind of a low point yourself, even when all is bad. I guess a character I just thought of is what's the homeless dude's name in Gintama? Mado?
No, I know his name. I'm going blank too. Hasegawa.
Hasagawa, okay, because that was, I remember at the start of the big final arc, shit was getting real, and he had this big, and then he gets his shit kicked in too, but it was still a good moment of him just sort of realizing, like, hey, I've been, basically half a breath away from committing fucking suicide. Shit's pretty bad right now, so I'm the one, everyone else has been knocked down, so I'm the one who's the strongest, right? So, just that same similar idea, I guess. I just remembered it just now, and it's like, oh yeah, you like Gintama, I'll bring it up, sure.
Gintama is epic, yes, indeed. Thank you for the reference. I appreciate it.
I gotta bring up things that weren't One Piece, so
finally, we're saved.
They do exist.
So I'm expecting big things. I will say, with 100% clarity, that Hisagi is way more on my radar now, and by that I mean I like him a lot more. Which means on AJ's reread, I know I'm gonna be homing in on fucking Hisagi.
Okay.
I'm looking at this guy. I'm watching you, motherfucker, because I like you now. I like him. I think it's obviously what's been building up for him. Obviously, is well, I say obviously because the novel literally tells us very early on that it is an unnotable sworder. It doesn't have the strength of Kenpachi. It doesn't have the brilliance of Urahara. It doesn't have the potential of Ichigo Kurosaki. But he does. He's going to do. He's the most pivotal player in this entire. When literally everyone's here but Ichigo, right? He is somehow the most pivotal player. The first novel does tell us that like he's essentially becomes a hero out of this.
Because thus far I feel like he's basically been a bystander, right? Like he was going around interviewing people in the first novel, and this one he just watched Urahara get defeated. And,
the status quo for him, yeah.
Like in a way, the novel has to tell us that, because if it didn't, it'd just be a Deus Ex Machina for him just come in and be like Leroy Jenkins and just like fucking solve the entire conflict. Like that doesn't work.
Which
right?
which is not not even it's not gonna happen. It's gonna be tasteful because there's so many people that are relevant in this that are gonna be doing shit right. So yeah.
What did you have to say about the dragons? Unless you were gonna get on something else, or the Urahara.
Yeah, I guess I can go ahead and mention that. Sure. Yeah, it's not
before you forget and it never comes up again. Because I don't have that much more to say, but I'll let you do that.
So I think it's interesting because we've only seen this technique one other time. We actually see it at the very end of 1,000-Year Blood War, when Aizen first confronts Yhwach solo. He uses this technique, and the dragons come up from the ground below, whereas Urahara's come down from the sky. I thought that was really interesting. I noticed that while I was reading it. Because the reason I even noticed that is because that mental image of Aizen using that technique is stuck in my head. Because everything Aizen does is always stuck in my head.
That's fair.
He's in my head rent free, so you know what it is. But and I was thinking that's really, really interesting because Urahara, through his, I guess you could look at it in a way maybe more in the future, but you could also look in the past by saying Urahara was the victor in maintaining the status quo. So he in reality, by the end of the conflict, stood at the summit. He stood atop the heaven
that
with
Aizen was trying to reach.
Because it was his technique. Well, in the first place, it was his Hogyoku that even allowed Aizen to ascend in the first place. I'm going to be getting more into the Hogyoku. I got some notes on the Hogyoku specifically. But I thought that was really interesting because literally, I mean, Aizen's whole ordeal caused him to go to the Mugen, which the lowest place in the Soul Society. Whereas Urahara, and this is another thing because I've mentioned this in previous episodes. Urahara, I would imagine, is the closest person to the heavens out of anyone in the Soul Reap, out of all the other Soul Reap, right? Because I think if any of the Zero Squad actually died, he would 100% be the next candidate. I can't think of any other candidate besides Urahara that would fill that role aptly. And especially because he has also made something unique and crazy, the Hogyoku, right? So he fits all the criteria, I feel like. Like, I think he would take What's-Her-Face's place easily. Our multiple arm girl.
Yes, the dark, not the dark-haired one, right?
So yeah, to me, it reminds me of that thing that, like, through maintaining the status quo and trying to hang on to that first sin as we know it now, right? Because it's not just the Reo as we know it anymore. It represents to certain Soul Reapers the first sin, and to Urahara too, right? But even still, and this is more interesting, Aizen saw it as kind of what it is visually. It's not only built atop sin, but you can even see that sin in its visual representation. The Reo it's an immovable. It doesn't have any limbs. It's pathetic, right? Whereas Urahara looks at it, even despite its sins, despite all that, that dark weight behind it, he looks at it as better than any other, if not great, at least better than any other alternative, right? We're obviously going to get answers on why that's the case, but it's really, really interesting. Urahara Aizen dynamic is always interesting, though. But again, well, since I already talked about the Hogyoku, I guess I can go into that.
Of course, sure. I only have like one more thing to bring up, unless you remind me of something.
Yeah. So during this stretch, Urahara mentions if Ichigo were given a Hogyoku, the world would be very solid for sure. Well, we know the Hogyoku, of course, is a crystal. The Reo was in a crystal. Aizen literally looks more like the Reo the more he harmonizes with the Hogyoku. Is Urahara saying that using a Hogyoku would have been the way to turn Ichigo into the new Reo? Did Urahara make it by studying what the Reo was encased in? Was that Urahara's true purpose all the way back then when he was making it? To make something that could make a new Soul King, right? I'm very much wondering, especially given that Aizen, he specifically sought this power to replace the Soul King. And then I put another quote. What do I say here? If I had given Mr. Kurosaki the Hogyoku, it would have been something entirely different, wouldn't it have? I'd imagine this means the world will change drastically depending on who the Reo is, which makes sense that Urahara would want to avoid that, given he's a man who always fights for the status quo. However, is this perhaps the true reason why he abandoned the Hogyoku after its creation in the first place? Perhaps he feared it because all the way back then he saw its ultimate potential to create a new Reo, which meant it would create a different world, which I literally just said, but there you go. I said it again via notes. I didn't know I said that in the notes, but yeah, it was a while ago that I heard that. Anyway, yeah. So that was the most interesting, I'll be real, that was the most interesting stuff in this entire novel for me, was that stuff, because it got me thinking a lot. As Urahara tends to do, though.
He's very good, yes. Because I didn't really pick up on that, but that's really good. And the last thing I was going to mention was how, so I think it's called the Threshold, or at least the Kyogoku, which is basically it's the void of space in between the sort of like metaphysical like stuff like Soul Society and the that's like there's basically a pocket where Tokinata made his palace. And I was just thinking about like because they talk about how it's like basically like the Soul Reapers manage life and death, but they don't manage all of it. Like there are souls and hollows, like all this like spirit energy and stuff that goes on. Just like there's a cycle of life and death that perpetuates without any Soul Reapers at all, right? So and that's like I just thought that it was interesting because it like feeds into the idea of like the world, like because Tokinata, I think it was Tokinata who was talking about how it's like the world that exists now is because of the Soul King and the Soul Reapers, but clearly like it doesn't have to be this way, right? Like it's the narrative that they have established that where we've already been shown in the novel where it's like, oh no, the Soul Reapers are not. If the Soul Reapers all just vanished overnight, like the life and death would not suddenly collapse like the Quincy's, unless so they manage the balance, but they're not required for it, I guess. So it's just interesting to think about that in regards to like, what is how does it work and what's the deal with their sin that we're gonna find out next time. That I already kind of remember, but we'll see for sure.
Okay, very relevant to everything that's going on. Reading this volume reminded me of an old message Radman sent me a while ago, back in March actually, and I just now found it. Really cool shit, because as we know from Can't Fear Your Own World now, they're planning on Karakura becoming the actual like the base for this throne to be transported and built atop, basically. That's the in-game plan, where Hikone sits on the throne above Karakura town. Well, Karakura is spelled with a kanji for sky, and again, this is Radman typing this to me, and he could have gotten this from somewhere else easily too. I don't know, but this is just what he was telling me. I'd imagine he did, because it's very, very detailed. But Karakura is spelled with a kanji for sky and seat. It is the place seated in the sky seat. Kara is also a homonym for empty. It is the empty seat, the throne to be taken. He who sits upon the heavens is an enlightened one, as the empty throne is a sign of Buddha. Aizen and Ichigo's duel takes place in the space of the empty throne, which sits in the sky. They are literally fighting to grasp the throne of Buddha, enlightenment itself. This is something I wrote before. Don't have a crazy interpretation of it, but also... So, okay, I guess this is his actual own original interpretation. Never mind. Glad I read the bottom stuff. And then, and he even says, back in March, he said, and there's Can't Fear Your Own World context that adds to this a lot, so you might not... So I might not be burning the kitchen. What the fuck was I saying? Huh. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's not super relevant to this, so I'm not going to read it. But anyway,
okay.
Yeah. So I think that symbol of that because I obviously don't know kanji, but that is really, I did think of that, and I'm glad I found it to talk about.
No, that's really cool. Thank you.
You're not welcome. Okay, I did it for me, not for you, and for the viewers.
Okay.
Yeah. Remember that. No, okay.
It's very nice.
Yeah.
I did think it was interesting because like we find out about the Gremmy and the sort of fate of that brain and how that became Hokone, and there was also the mention of like Tokinata pilfering Zanpakutos from the dead, and basically like him just being this scavenger and profiting. He's the aristocracy, the top person already at the top, and he's using that power to profit off of this war and literally set the stage for his current plan, right? So just I don't know, just to think about that in a way of just exploring the fallout from the Thousand Year Blood War in that way, because it's like I wasn't sitting there thinking about, man, what happened to Grummy's brain? Plot hole, like because but it's still interesting to see that explored. Yeah, there it is, exactly. So,
and by the way, it's not even maybe it'll be revealed, or maybe it's just not. The first thing I thought of now that the brain is coming back in action, I was like, oh, I don't know why I didn't think of this fucking in Thousand Year Blood War. Feels obvious to me. Wouldn't this not just be the Rayo's brain? But I was expecting it to be revealed in this volume that, oh yeah, by the way, this is the Rayo's brain. That's why it's so fucking special. No, it's just from, I guess it's a shrift from Urahara. He literally made a brain. That's literally just. I thought it would make more. I thought it would make sense if it was the Rayo's brain, but.
Okay. I mean, I guess I didn't really think about where it came from, because I guess I just assumed, because like kind of like how Asnot was like very sickly and on a bed. I just imagine like the brain just occurred from somewhere or something, and just like he acquired it or sought it out and made it, especially because like but maybe it is a piece of the soul, because he did have Gerard and Peridna on his side as well, so it makes sense that he would have gathered other parts of the Rayo.
Yeah, but I mean, I'd imagine if it didn't get revealed in this volume, it probably is not. Maybe it will, but that feels out of place. I feel like if it was going to be revealed, it would have been revealed now. But
that's true. No, that because they did that with Aura, and they mentioned the nails as being the source of the Fullbringer. So, which I guess, I hadn't thought about how that in a way, because it's like it happens. They're activated by hollow powers, but I guess in a way, like Chad and Orihime have Quincy powers as well, sort of, kind of, not really, but a little bit. Because it's it's the Rayo being a Quincy, of course. So yeah.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah.
Anyway, I don't think I have any more to say. Pretty neat setup.
I do want to mention that since Hiyori is still in the living world, I love, and it makes so much sense, that she would be working for odd jobs, because Ikumi is a fucking mommy, and she found her second mommy finally. I
that's right.
I love this.
I didn't even think about that.
I love this because she's a mommy lover. She's got mommy issues.
Of course. No, I mean we've seen, and we've seen what the Squad Zero lady, right? Like she gives them all food, right? Like that's like mom's cook. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. That's really good.
I was immediately like, let's go, Hiyori, you found your new mommy. That was crazy. Which sucks, because I will obviously probably not going to get a scene interaction from them. I would desperately wanted to see an interaction with them, but it's not going to happen. So
that would be really funny.
The last thing I have here was actually the first note I made. It was when we were getting the explanation of Hikone's relationship with their Zanpakuto. It helped me potentially realize the meaning of Ichigo's current Zanpakuto, which is like in the Hell arc, how he essentially keeps the same OG Zangetsu that comes back out at the end of Thousand Year Blood War. Like that's what he's using in the Hell arc.
Yeah.
And so I wrote, we see him use the base big blade again, even in the Hell arc. We know that it was once fake, and that it represents Yuhabaha's influence on Ichigo's power. But Ichigo accepted Zangetsu's influence as a part of his Soul Reaper power. Thus, it makes sense that he would return to form with the real thing this time. The same weapon, this time with no limitations, because he now understands where it comes from. So, this molds together with my final, and I'm pretty sure I said last podcast, like my final thoughts on Ichigo's final power-up, is that it is the ultimate example of finding strength in the formless, how his power seems to very abstractly blend multiple powers, and it seems very unnatural. It's so unnatural that it literally shows up in his design that he only has one horn, so it's not even symmetrical. But through that asymmetry, Ichigo actually gains more power because he's centered inside. He's centered somewhere where someone like Yuhabaha could never be able to see, and we see by the end he couldn't see because it was partly Zangetsu that enabled this. It was partly the hollow powers and in white,
Yes.
So this kind of ties into that, how him going back to form with the singular Zanpakuto goes into the idea that like, oh, he can essentially do whatever he wants because to Ichigo, this is part of his essence. This is part of him. This is part of his Zanpakuto. And I think even I think me and Radman were talking about it not an SPS. I'm thinking of Oda, in one of Kubo's questionnaires. Kubo even said, "Oh yeah, Ichigo can make it go back to the dual Zanpakuto if he wanted to. He can do that." So again, like this is very much, it very much ties into that. I think it's really, 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 really cool. I like it. I apparently, at least Radman was telling me, there's a lot of people who don't like how free form it is. It is to the point now where I want to say I think Ichigo has like the best powers in any series I've ever seen. I think it's so fucking cool. It's like Luffy's. It's like Luffy's, but it's cooler to me because it's essentially the same thing, but it's a lot more like you got to dig a lot deeper.
Well, I think what's interesting about Ichigo's powers is because he has like he's a human, he's a hollow, he's a soul reaper, he's a Quincy, he's a Fullbringer, right? Like he coalesces these different power sources, and in doing so, he's like he's explored. Like I talked about it before, how like the Soul Society arc has him get his Bankai. Like we explore his powers as a Soul Reaper. The Arrancar arc, we see he's using his Visored Mask. He becomes Hollow in the fight with Ulquiorra. We're exploring his powers as a Hollow, right? So like Fullbringer and Quincy, where every arc is exploring his powers in a different way, right? So you have all that layered. You're layering these different powers together, and all of his experiences are becoming him, right? So we're like I love Luffy's powers as well, but it's kind of like obviously he's got like Haki and his Devil Fruit power, but I feel like there's it's different is what I'm trying to say, in the way that like Luffy's powers layer together versus how Ichigo's powers layer together, right? And so no, I absolutely get you, because it is really cool.
Well, do I have anything else to add here?
I feel like
it's a little bit unfortunate because a lot of this, the first two novels have been mostly setup, and then I feel like because of that, these first two episodes are just going to be a lot of us talking, oh yeah, this is like really cool shit. But I feel like the third one is going to really make us go, okay. Even though it's not going to be as long as any of our previous Bleach episodes, because there's not, these novels aren't going to have near as much subtext that we can dig through and make cool observations. I feel like, this one, we're just going to have a lot of reaction type, things like, that was epic. Like, wasn't that a cool revelation? Isn't the Soul Society are frauds, bro. I can never look at them the same again. Oh my god.
Yeah, I feel like I was going to say something, but I can't remember what it was. So it's probably about time to end the discussion.
Yeah, sorry it was so short, but maybe for some of you that's actually better because
I definitely, getting a 4-hour episode if you're not prepared for it, it is what it is. But anyway, so thanks for listening. Good, guys. Yeah, next time we're reading Camp Fairy World, and then I guess we're almost done with Bleach. We'll have one more episode after that to wrap up all the other stuff. So, very nice. Thank you everybody for listening, and we will see you next time.
Peace out.